This is Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Lee Red.
And I'm Winter Red. And in this episode, we're talking with Hilary Erickson. She is the founder of Pulli Curls, where they talk about pregnancy and parenting. And she is also a labor and delivery nurse. And we really wanted to chat with her specifically about what it looks like for those who are going to have a stillbirth or an infant loss. So let's get to the episode. As a word of caution to our listeners, this discussion contains emotional triggers of stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Hope this helps someone out there. Lee, how's it going?
It's going okay. We I don't know. We just I was gonna say we just came back from a little weekend trip, and I thought it was good.
It was nice because it was actually the place we went to kind of right after Brandon passed away, and it was kind of a little weekend trip to get away, just to get away for a minute. Yeah. And so it was nice to be up there. We kind of wanted to give you guys an update of what's going on before we get into the interview with Hilary. We're excited for that one, obviously. But we celebrated Brandon's birthday. I know that was a few months ago in July, but we celebrated Brandon's birthday. Any things, Lee, you want to tell everybody what we did or how that looked for us?
You betcha. So first of all, we launched this podcast on his birthday. The introductory episode came out on his birthday, and we had a nice, quiet day ourselves. We didn't have much expectation, and that was great. We got up, and we went to brunch, and then
That was mainly to get us out of bed.
Yeah, get us out of bed. We scheduled a brunch, and we got out, and it was nice.
Thankfully, I got work off that day as a recommendation from my boss, which was awesome. I really appreciated that suggestion. One thing that I was a little floored at was the day before his birthday. And I couldn't figure out why I was being so cranky and so snappy with my coworkers. And it wasn't until, I don't know, midway through the day when I was like, oh, actually, today is the day that we found out that Brandon didn't have a heartbeat anymore. And that's why I think I felt so crummy. So if I can give any sort of advice is that it might be wise you don't have to do anything special. Jan talked about this in her episode, but you don't have to do anything special on the quote unquote, I guess, death date or the date that you found out when your child passed away. But maybe just set it aside because it could be a rough day as well as the birthday. And the birthday was lovely. I thought his birthday was really, really nice.
It was. Another thing we did for his birthday, we had we were raising money in Brandon's name, and so many people were so generous and showed so much support and love to us. And we were able to raise money to help pay for coffins, for
caskets.
Casket sounds a little.
I think it sounds a
little
bit better. Yeah.
But we as a community, Winter, myself, Lucy, and all of you who have helped us, we have thus far been able to pay for 3 caskets, and we want to thank everybody who has shown us so much support in this. So thank you.
Yeah, that was incredible to see all the support. We were hoping just to raise enough money for maybe 1 casket, and it was you guys above and beyond went. It was amazing. So, and to be able to get people that called out and said, "Hey, I have a friend that could use some help. Do you think you guys can help?" And we're like, "Yes." It was pretty great. It was we were really so grateful that so many people donated. So.
Yes. Winter, this is going to be better coming from you. Would you like to tell our audience about our new release scheduling?
Oh, yeah. I probably should say something about that. Okay, so we Lee and I had
We sat down and had a
we had a heart
to heart.
and we were realizing that we had taken on a lot with our release schedule, how we publish our episodes. We have interviewed quite a few families, and we're so excited to bring those to you. But because of everything that we're doing, because we work and we're raising our daughter and we are just involved in a lot of, community and church things, we are going to change our publishing schedule a little. We are going to basically have one family a month. So we're going to do the the mom's birth story and mom's advice episodes come out on the 1st. And then on the 15th, if there's the dad episode and the dad's advice episodes, they'll come out on the 15th. Now, the ones where we don't have both parents telling their stories and giving us advice, then we're going to try and have available healthcare professionals, or maybe just a one-on-one discussion with Lee and I where we talk about some things that we've discovered over the last few months. So I think that will help our sanity. It will help our family.
It will. We were very ambitious. It was a good goal, but like Winter said, we had a heart-to-heart talk, and we have found out that to give you guys a good product and do justice to the families, we can't do 2 families a month.
Yeah, we can't sustain that. It's just going to be, it's a lot, because just to give you a little bit of realization, we have another podcast called Hungry Squared, and we were doing, 4 episodes a month and that is once a week kind of a thing. And they'd be about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour each. So we were producing 4 hours of content for that podcast, and we're going along. We were doing okay. And then we started saying that we were going to do these 2 families. And if you look at it, it's about twice that amount for that podcast, for our podcast, the Still a Part of Us podcast. So we were like, we need to back off, or else we're going to burn ourselves out. And we want to be able to, like Lee says, produce some quality content for you. And I actually honestly think that you guys probably can't consume it that quickly, because it's a lot of hours.
It's heavy.
Yeah. And so a lot of people actually have told us that they're like, I only listen to this one. I have to take a breather so that I can process it. And then I'm going to go listen to the dad's one. And then, so that's kind of how people have been telling us. So we understand. So don't feel so stressed out if you haven't listened to all of them. We get it. It's heavy stuff. Yeah, so we're going to try and back it off so that you guys have time to consume the media, and we have time to produce it in a quality manner, I think.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, those are the main things that we wanted to fill in everybody with. So without further ado, we're going to talk to Hilary Erickson. She's been a friend for a while, and we're excited to talk to her about her perspective as a labor and delivery nurse. That is, I feel like we got really close to the nurses that were helping us in both of our births that we had. And I appreciate their perspective and all that they do and see on a regular basis. So we hope you enjoy the interview. We'd like to welcome Hilary Erickson of Pulling Curls. She is actually a longtime friend. We were in band together. Just going to make a quick confession there. And we ran into each other a few years back, and she's been blogging for a long time at Pulling Curls, and she talks about parenting and pregnancy. She's an L&D nurse, a labor and delivery nurse. And so we thought this would be perfect for her to come on and talk a little bit about fetal loss, infant loss, stillbirth, kind of talk about it from her point of view. So welcome, Hilary. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, you guys. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, are you really?
No, that sounded less happy.
We're glad you're here. So Hilary, tell us how long you've been practicing as an L&D nurse and kind of where you're located, so we kind of have some context.
So I am a labor and delivery nurse in the Phoenix area, and I've been practicing labor and delivery since 2001. So a long time. Before labor and delivery, I did hospice and geriatrics and pediatrics. So I have a little bit of varied experience, but it's mostly been in labor and delivery.
Has it always been something you've wanted to do?
I loved labor and delivery in school, which was surprising to me. I actually don't really love babies per se. I mean, I love my own children, but I don't love newborns, and I'm not a huge fan of like after baby stuff. So, but I love delivering the babies and all the excitement of that kind of thing. So labor and delivery is definitely my home. One thing I should say is that while everyone thinks that labor and delivery is a very happy unit, there's a lot of times that we get to deal with families in grieving moments that aren't always a stillborn. There's a baby who comes out who has an anomaly or a severe anomaly that they have to be rushed to a different hospital. So there is a lot in labor and delivery that people don't think about, that we're constantly just supporting patients through the grieving process of what they thought their baby was going to be like or what their life was going to be like, because sometimes it is a full life change by what they've had happen that day.
Hilary, I do have a question. When you have a mother coming in and you know beforehand that the baby has passed away, be it a stillbirth or whatever it is, or if you know that there's a condition with the child that the child's not going to be living too long after birth, can you walk us through how you get yourself into a proper mindset or what your team does to help yourselves prepare for, first of all, telling the family that, this child is not one for the earth, and B, how do you keep yourself healthy?
So being real churchy, I do like to say a little prayer that I can be a support to the family that day. I figure that my main job is just to try and make the day as easy as possible for that couple and for that family. I do go through any report that the doctor gives us, so the prenatal records. Usually we like to talk to the doctor on the phone if they're the one that found in the office or whatever the situation is. If it was a condition that the baby won't be able to live after delivery, then we would go through the prenatal record. We would be talking with the nursery nurse, because sometimes we involve them just to provide comfort measures or stuff like that. We might be talking to the neo just to make sure that everyone is on board with the plan that the family has already established, because by the time they would get to us, they would already have a plan, most likely. And we do have a giant binder of all of the resources and things that we need to do. There is a lot of charting that goes on behind the scenes for a fetal demise or something of that nature. And so we do have to get all those kind of ducks started in a row.
And then what do you do when the families come? I'm actually really curious, because we were handled I thought, with a lot of care when we arrived at the hospital. I'm wondering how you guys, I'm sure you choose a certain area in the L&D so that they're kind of away. And then how do you talk to the patient about fetal monitoring if the baby is still alive but there's likely they're going to pass away during birth or after birth? How do you explain family wishes during the delivery? And I mean, what kind of things do you talk about? Because I felt like we had good care, but I feel like I almost kind of wish I had a few more prompts from my team, like, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to try this? I mean, I'm just curious how much you guys give to the patients in information.
I mean, once they come in, I definitely just say how incredibly sorry I am and how much I really want to make this day as easy as possible to please ask me any question at all. And that this isn't the first time that I've done this. And I hope that my experience can help them get through the process today. So, and then I just start going through, we always put fetal monitors on first, and we would definitely put the contraction monitor on. If we knew that there was a fetal demise, we would probably just leave the heart rate monitor off. But if we were looking for a fetal demise, then we would, be using our tools in labor and delivery for that type of a thing. And then we do just have to go through an assessment, because first of all, I'm a nurse and I have to make sure that I'm caring for the mom's well-being. So that assessment is pretty normal, no matter what patient's coming in. And so we do go through the 6,000 questions with the mom. And then we kind of just let them chill out for a little bit. And then, it depends on how imminent things are. They may be in labor, or we may need to start labor because for whatever reason. I do encourage them to get an epidural and to have as much pain management as they would like. And we do start the process of what they're going to do kind of when they go home a little bit. And, I slowly start to bring it into the thing. Just ask them if they have ever had a mortuary that they've ever used or that their parents have ever used. And that also depends on how old the baby is. I can't remember our guidelines exactly how many weeks, but some weeks we can take the baby and some weeks they have to take the baby. So it just depends on the situation.
Do you ever go through, for example, if there's a fetal demise or a stillbirth, Do you ever talk about like how the baby's body is going to look like or be like when after delivery? I'm just kind of curious because that was a kind of a sticking point for us at delivery for
Yeah.
of our son.
Yeah, personally, I had no clue about what would be a good way to put it, the degeneration of the body, or it's not a normal, because Brandon passed away. His body is not functioning normally, so I had no clue about a lot of what his body was going through. So it was
Yeah.
a little shocking to me.
I have had patients ask me what I think the baby will look like. And for us, it's really difficult unless we can like pinpoint when the baby stopped moving or something like that, like if they had a gush of blood or something like that. But most of the time, people don't really want to talk about it or think about it until after the baby's out. And so it's not something that I routinely bring up, but I have talked with patients about it before. And maybe I should bring it up and just be like, do you guys have any questions about what it'll be like? It's honestly not something I've really thought of, but that's a great input.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
No, I think preparation, that kind of thing, sometimes you need to be mentally prepared for it. So that's why I'm like, oh, that might have been good for us to talk to our providers about that. So,
because I remember talking with Winter, because she does have a medical background. She was like, oh yeah, that makes sense why this and that started to happen to his body. And I was completely baffled. I was completely in shock.
Yeah. And of course you'd hate to prepare them and then the baby comes out and has died very recently and they look absolutely normal.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really know as a nurse.
Yeah, that is tricky. And so you mentioned that you kind of talk a little bit about start talking about the mortuary and that type of thing. Anything, are you guys responsible for doing all the bereavement stuff afterward? Because we had a social worker come in and hand us this folder. It was like this huge folder full of papers, and it was a little overwhelming. But I'm curious, do you guys start introducing the idea a little bit more to them, or?
I mean, it depends on how much time we have during the labor process and how families are doing. So I do try and start it a little bit early on, just because I think if they have some things in motion before the baby comes out, they can enjoy the baby more after. Yeah, so that's mostly what we do. I bet social work does come in with a giant packet because there's a lot of resources for people after they have a stillborn. So, but I don't know what social work does. And honestly, I feel like it's all us. And so I'm sure social work feels like it's all them. So, but we mostly are the ones that are in there all the time. And social work's not on the weekends. And I swear most things happen on the weekend.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we appreciated so much our nurses because I felt like they talked to us a lot. Like they were our points of contact and communication. So we appreciate it. So thanks, Hilary. I know that it's your profession. What happens during the delivery then? Can you walk us through how you guys handle the delivery and then how you handle just right after the delivery with the families?
Oftentimes, it's not unusual for a stillborn to be born without a doctor. Sometimes it happens faster because we're not really monitoring stuff as well. And because the baby doesn't have as much muscle tone, sometimes they just come out easier. So when that happens, we just try and wrap the baby up, hand it to mom, if that's what they want. And I'm very cautious to be like, what would you guys like? Sometimes they need a moment. We take the baby over to the warmer, wipe it off. Some of them don't want to see it at all right away. And so you mostly just ask them and kind of are guided by their wishes.
That was pretty much our situation. When Brandon was born, they cleaned him up a little bit, but then they brought him straight over to us. And yeah, it was
rough.
It was rough.
Yeah.
I will say, I think in the 20 years that I've done labor and delivery, in the beginning, I felt like more people didn't want to see it at all. And they just kind of wanted to sweep it under the carpet. And most people now want to see it and they need that type of closure. So that's nice to see, because as a nurse, you feel like, come on, just take this time. Just a little bit of time just to see the baby so that you can kind of move on a little bit better. But it's up to people. They get to make their own choices.
Right.
Now I have a question. In the hospital that you work in the labor and delivery, is there a special women's care unit that, because in our situation, we went from labor and delivery straight to the special women's care. Was it called special women's care unit or something?
Yeah,
like
it was not the usual post postpartum area. We were kind of put into a separate area. Just, I think it would be easier for us and it would be easier for everybody else too,
So my hospital is super small now. And so most parents stay in labor and delivery the whole time. Usually you don't
okay.
stay the full 2 days after a stillborn. So they usually stay about 24 hours ish. And so they just stay with us in labor and delivery. We do have a special marking that we put on the door just so that everybody is aware before they go in the room. When I've worked at other hospitals, we did try and put them very separate from other new moms as much as we could. But it really depends on how busy we are and how full the unit is, because there's only so much you can do sometimes.
Yeah. That's kind of nice, actually, just to stay in L&D, because it's like, oh, you're kicking us out. Dang it. And then I don't know how many stillbirths do you see? Would you say that you see? Has it increased, decreased over the years? I'm just curious.
I feel like it's about the same. Now, the hospital I work at now is just not as busy.
Right.
And so I feel like we see less there just because there's probably less people. But I feel like it's the same. And I was trying to get pregnant for a long time at one of my hospitals. And so they didn't have me do fetal demises too much during that time if they can avoid it. We do not give fetal demises to pregnant women. It's not good for the nurse and it's not good for the patient if we can avoid it. Yeah. And so we are cautious and stuff like that. If someone's recently had a traumatic incident, a family member die, we try not to give patients like that to them. So I haven't had a ton. I definitely help a lot because I had a photography studio. I do help a lot with the photography of the newborns after, because we do take pictures. Even if Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep doesn't come, we still take pictures. So I've been helping with that. But
that's cool. I didn't know that.
So a quick little story. My sister, she works at Primary Children's, and she called our nurses, and she pretty much went mother bear on them. Just, I will come up there and I will kill you myself. That's probably a little too harsh. She didn't threaten life, but I'll come up there and beat your face in if you don't treat them, with the best care you can. And they're like, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of them. And we got some wonderful pictures. They did the handprints and the molds. And I don't know if it was because of my sister's call or if that was just normal for them, but there was some nice hand molds and foot molds, and it was nice. So thank you.
Yeah, every hospital seems to be very different. Usually we're provided with stuff through volunteers, like the molds and that type of thing. And a lot of it depends on the baby and what you can do. Some babies, it's even really hard to get footprints. So we just try and do what we can. Sometimes we can get hair. We try and make little bracelets for the baby with their name at this hospital that I'm at now. So
that's really cool that you have a few things to offer them. So, and then I'm curious, what kind of training do you guys get? Staff, like nurses, staff members, social workers, how do you guys prepare to deal with these families that have losses? I mean, it feels so heavy. And I was like, that would be on a floor that is generally very happy. This would be a bummer. Like, this would be so sad, I think.
I wouldn't say that I've gotten special bereavement training. I did have a loss when I was training for like the 6 weeks while I was training. And my nurse gave me some good advice, but you mostly go in, you listen to what other nurses are saying. I mean, I did hospice, so it isn't a big stretch for me to talk about these kind of things. So I don't know. I haven't had a whole lot of training, and we're really good to like support each other when people come out of a room and it's really heavy in there, to be like, hey, how are you doing? Can I go grab you some food? Have you peed yet? Because we get so caught up in a family situation, we forget about ourselves, which doesn't help the family or ourselves. Yeah. So we're good about doing stuff like that.
Helping each other out. That's great.
So in our situation, it was actually a really big blessing. We got a cuddle cot. I don't know if you guys have cuddle cots in your hospital or if it's sort of a newer thing. I don't know. But
we don't have cuddle cots, and we do have an area that we can put babies if families need them, if they want them out of the room for a time period, which I respect, because I think sometimes when we take them out of the room, they finally can breathe and they kind of get a little peace. So I'm open to whatever a family wants. Mm-hmm. We don't have cuddle cots, but families have had babies in their rooms for the whole 24 hours. So I'm not sure what a cuddle cot would do differently. Yeah.
I was going to say just for listeners, a cuddle cot or something of that nature is to cool the body so that the body doesn't deteriorate as quickly. I don't technically know if we had a cuddle cot. We had just one of those cooling kind of blanket, cooling pads underneath our son. And that helped out really a lot, I think, because
So-
we had him for 22 hours, I think, in our room.
Yeah, so we don't even know if it was what is Cuddle Cot, the brand name?
yeah.
So, yeah, we don't know if we had a Cuddle Cot or if it was just an ice pack underneath. So,
Yeah, it was just a cooling pad. So your hospital allows for 24 hours, it sounds like, then.
I think we allow them as long as they want, but most moms leave by 24 hours.
Okay.
So that's why I just picked that number.
And is there anything that, as you've seen some of these happen over the years, are there any things that you wish more families would try and do in preparation? Or do you feel like these families are well prepared for a stillbirth? Or
I don't think anyone's prepared.
I know, right? That's such a dumb question, but it's just like, is there anything that you've seen that you're like, oh gosh, maybe they should, before they come in, they should do this thing? Or is there anything that you saw that you've seen a pattern?
Well, the thing I wish people would do is just be really open to telling me whatever the heck you want. Because like I said, I think a lot of people are worried that they shouldn't say that they'd like the baby to leave the room for a little bit, even though that would give them a great sense of relief if they kind of didn't have to look at it and think about it. We are open to pretty much anything you want at that point in time. All of the policies and procedures that we normally have in labor and delivery are pretty much out the window. You can get an epidural when you want. We would give you morphine. We'd give you a sleeping pill. There's all these sorts of things that we could do that might make you more comfortable that maybe people aren't asking us. And we suggest things, but sometimes we don't know what you're feeling inside. And so I just wish people weren't hoping that I would read their mind. If they could just tell me what I could do to make their life easier, I would love to do it.
morphine and cheeseburgers.
We will not give you a cheeseburger if you've had an epidural, though. So that doesn't change.
Yeah, what's the worst that's going to happen after an epidural and a cheeseburger?
Also, you have to remember it's a hospital cheeseburger, so it's not the
Okay.
same as In-N-Out.
That's a good point. She has a good point.
Mhm.
So we've kind of talked a little bit more stillbirth. When a baby is born and they know that he or she's not going to live for very long, do you guys treat them any differently in that case? Do you just basically kind of hands off, give them as much time as possible with their baby? How does that look?
We have to establish a plan of care with the parents. And so we want to be really clear that we are or aren't going to resuscitate the baby. We usually bring in a neonatologist just because I think they need to clear themselves, just so that they know that the patient knows that they aren't going to do anything. We're not going to do anything. And these are the reasons why. Hopefully by this point, the doctors talked with them, the perinatologist talked to them, and all those kind of things. So, and then after that, it's 100% up to the parents. I've had some people want to hold the baby. I've had some people not want to hold the baby. It's just up to each individual situation.
Wow.
Yeah.
The fact that you've seen everything, like, yep, it can go either way. That's interesting.
Yeah. And some of the hardest thing is to have respect for whatever the family wants to do, because when they're like, no, I do not want to see the baby or hold it, even if it's still alive, that is rough. And usually we just assign a nurse to it.
Oh, really? And then the nurse takes care of the baby until passes? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. That would be difficult.
So, as a nurse, you've talked about watching other nurses and learning from them and their experiences. What are some things that you personally would say don't say to families who are experiencing either loss or will experience loss? What is something that you're just like, hey, you're a brand new, you're training at a brand new nurse, and say, hey, definitely don't ask them about this, or don't mention anything about that. Are there some things that you're just like, we don't even want to broach that topic?
I mean, most of it is not talk about blame, or the mom already blames herself, and everybody already feels that in the room. And so we try not to talk about the blame, and we try and reassure the mom that we know that they did everything that they could in this situation, and just crappy things happen. And we are so sorry for that. We don't talk a whole lot, because a lot of times they're like, do you know why this usually happens? We get that question a lot. And I would say that most of the time we don't know why it happens, especially in labor and delivery, because we only know what happens in labor and delivery once they, go home. Usually the doctor never shares with us anything that they found later on. And so I mostly just encourage people to be as supportive as possible. Tell them we know that they did everything that they could, and we're just going to deal with how things are occurring today.
And then a follow-up question, is there something that you personally do for the family? I know you said that you hug the mother and or you just try to show love to the family, but is there something that you personally do for the family? Like you said that you take photos, but do you ever like here's a chocolate candy bar or whatever? Like is there something that you try to do for them and like make sure to always smile or you know
Well, I don't know that smiling's always the best tactic. I mean, it's important to really try not to get overly emotional with the mom. Sometimes if they're crying, you might shed a tear or two, but I think our job is to try and remain kind of their rock and even if the situation is making us very emotional, to try and solve those things outside of the room. We have a lot of stuff that we give the parents, like a layette set that we don't put the baby in that they can take home. A blanket. There's a lot of things that are provided by volunteers in the local area that are very sweet. And so that's always super helpful. I do take photos and I like to point out like things that I think are sweet on the baby, like look at that sweet little nose and help them to love the baby because I think a lot of times they see that baby and it does look very foreign. It doesn't look like a normal baby.
Yeah.
But there are still so many sweet things and talk about maybe how it looks like their other kids or if they can see either of them in the baby, just like you would with a normal baby, just, talking that way with the family.
That's very helpful, actually. Okay, so I'm going to ask Lee's questions again, but not from your point of view as not a nurse. So, is there anything that you think that you shouldn't say to a lost family?
Things I shouldn't say to a lost family?
like
Yeah.
if you had a friend who was going through this and as a friend, not as a nurse.
But as a friend, but also with your experience as a nurse, like, is there anything that you've seen somebody do in the, like, during the delivery or anything that's in your experience where you're like, oh, that person probably shouldn't have said that?
Well, I just think family sometimes gets overly involved and a time that really should be the couple and possibly siblings. Um, Moms like to get overly involved in and sure come in and see the baby, experience it, but then leave and let the family have their time. And then, yeah. So most of the time, that's what I see is families that are overly involved in the hospital. I don't really know what happens so much when people go home, but
And then anything that you would recommend if somebody is going through a loss or a family member is going through a loss like this, is there anything that you saw that people did that was super helpful, super meaningful, that the parents appreciated while they were there or afterward?
I think parents are just touched by small things of support, texts being like, hey, I heard, I hope things are going okay. You're in my thoughts and my prayers, things like that. I mostly see things that the nurses do. And so I've seen so many nurses go far and above beyond what was like our job duty. I've had nurses who called every mortuary in the area to get pricing for a family because they were really concerned about the cost. I've had nurses go and get photos printed at CVS because out of their own pocket because our printer just didn't look very good. I just think it's hard for us to watch it. And so anything that we can do, we really just try and do it. And honestly, all of the nurses on the unit, we all started calling mortuaries in the area too to help her out because we want to try and make things as easy as possible as well.
Yeah, that's great and cool. You nurses are awesome. Seriously, all of the L&D nurses that we've ever had have been amazing and so good. So, one thing we didn't cover that I want to kind of clarify. So we found out that Brandon had passed away when we went to L&D just to check and see if he was moving around and stuff like that. So we had a doctor on call and they got the doctor and the doctor told us. Can you kind of tell us if there's a difference if we found out when I went in for just a regular checkup versus what happened to us? Do you guys have any policies about that?
So in the hospital, I mean, we get a lot of people who come in for decreased fetal movement. We try and see them as soon as possible and get them on the monitor quickly. If we aren't able to get a heartbeat on our monitor, then we call an ultrasound. Usually at that point in time, I'm just like, it depends on how many weeks they are. But I'll say, I'm not able to find it with mine. We just need some better equipment. So we'll call in the ultrasound from across the street. If they aren't seeing any heart movement, then we are allowed to say that it looks like there's no heart movement on the ultrasound, but we need to wait for a doctor to clarify. And that's where we kind of have to leave it. Although we're pretty sly about letting patients know that that's what we're seeing. So it's hard because that's medical jargon that a lot of people don't know. And so we do kind of clarify it. It doesn't really look like there's a heartbeat, because nothing is worse than leaving that mom in the complete dark for half an hour while their doctor comes in. That's just not fair as a human.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah, that would just be so rough. I didn't realize that you couldn't say anything unless the doctor was there officially, right?
Yeah.
I think we covered everything. How do you feel about that? Do you want to go through anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything that you would like to bring up?
I mean, I just wish people could feel open to ask nurses whatever they want, because I've learned a lot about birth trauma lately. And if there's any questions that people have, they should feel free to ask their doctor or the nurse while they're in the hospital. It's kind of hard because you don't come up with the questions till you go home. But sometimes doctors don't want to talk very much about this. I don't know if they're afraid of litigation or whatever. But in the office, you should feel free to say, was this normal, or to ask for an autopsy, all of those things, whatever you want, whatever questions you want answered, you should try and get them answered instead of just letting them linger in your mind, because that's what we're there for. So we're there to answer questions and be of service to you.
I think that's a great piece of advice there, because like I had questions about Brandon up until just a couple of months ago. I was like, wait, I need to ask this question. And so I think that's great advice to just keep asking. And if you don't know, obviously there's not going to be answers to everything, because a lot of it's just unknown. You can just keep asking. Hilary, thanks. This was great. A little peek into what you guys do, and we appreciate it. I just want to say Lee's sister is a nurse, and we think nurses are awesome. So thank you for doing what you do and showing the compassion that you do on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please go check Hilary's website out, Pulling Curls. She actually started a new podcast actually on parenting and pregnancy and some travel and some other things. It's a lot of fun, quick tips and wonderful guests and such. So please check her out there. I'll have links in the show notes, and we will see you guys next time.
I would personally like to say thank you to Hilary. It was wonderful to talk with her and get another perspective on such a horrible thing that occurs in people's lives. It's good to know that the nurses are there to help us and help people.
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Hilary. And you guys take her advice. Ask questions. Make sure you ask questions if you feel like you need to.
Head over to our website, stillapartofus.com. And there you can find the show notes, including a full transcription of the interview and any resources that are mentioned. There you can sign up for our short and helpful email newsletter. You can also learn how you can become a patron and support the work it takes to produce this show for just a couple dollars a month. And lastly, you could find out how to get in touch with us if you'd like to share your child's story on the show.
The show was produced and edited by Winter and Lee Red. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, Vanishing Note. You can find him at joshwoodward.com. Lastly, subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
To be sure of hitting the target, shoot first and call whatever you hit the target. Ashley Brilliant.